Hello, and welcome to Forgotten Tales. I'm your host, Raz. On this podcast, I'll be retelling stories from our beloved video games. The stories range from older games to newly released ones. Some stories might just be on certain characters in the games, as well as a bit of the game itself. Listen to this podcast on Amazon Music, iHeart, and Spotify. Enjoy! Free of gods, the mortals flourished in the Fourth Age. Hence, the Fourth Age is referred to as the Age of Mortals. The Fourth Age laid down the framework for most modern-day empires, yet is relatively uneventful. The surviving races began to rebuild and flourish amongst the world. Here are a few things each race began to rebuild and do during the Fourth Age. Humans. Aside from the city of Santharium, a few settlements in the Kandarian Desert, and the refugee town of Bergdarat, most humans at the beginning of the Fourth Age lived in barbaric tribes. As the age progressed, they started to build new permanent settlements, some of which turned into mighty cities, thus allowing humans to become the dominant race in Gielinor by the end of the Fourth Age. Gnomes returned to the surface right after the end of the God Wars, where they found their settlements destroyed. Between the 3rd and 5th centuries of the Fourth Age, gnomes were forced to hide from the barbaric human tribes, avoiding extinction. Shortly after that, the Grand Tree was planted and gnome civilization and technology began to thrive. Goblins. Following Bandos' banishment from Gielinor at the end of the God Wars, the various goblin tribes were left leaderless. The goblins, not having any commanders or big high war god to give them orders, began to fight the various races, including the Org, but this led them to be driven out from Feldup Hills in a bloody civil war. Following the goblins being driven north by much stronger Org tribes, the Thorobshan and the Gorgashan tribes set their eyes on the gnomes. Even though they vastly outnumbered the gnomes, the gnome named Glorpri created illusions of giant tortoises which caused the goblins to flee in terror. Following the goblins' tribes' failures of not being able to conquer settlements of the other races and with their supplies running low, they began fighting each other. The battle here lasted a long time, and it seemed like the surface goblins would go extinct from the constant battle. But it's at this moment a goblin gets a vision from the Big High War God, which tells them to stop fighting each other and gives them their commandments, as well as promising to send them a chosen commander to lead them in the future. The goblin generals believed the vision and stopped fighting each other. They constructed a temple at the site of the battle, which sunk into the ground, as well as writing down goblin legends and commandments in a holy book. It is at this time the Dorgashan Civil War takes place. Org. The Orgs mostly stayed in Feldup Hills, and their only recorded historical event is a bloody civil war with the goblins. Dwarves. Dwarves remained under the surface during the Fourth Age. During that time, they discovered a huge cavern where they built Keldagrim. Sometime after the city's foundation, most dwarven magical powers were somehow lost, allowing them only the ability to cast Superheat item. During the rule of King Elvis, which quickly became a ruling organization of Keldagrim, was founded. By around the year 1650, after King Alvin's death, the consortium ruled the entire dwarven realm. Due to their lack of magical abilities, the technology of dwarves had become very advanced by that time. By the end of the Fourth Age, or at the beginning of the Fifth Age, they started making first contact with the surface once again, after a few thousand years. Imkondo dwarves emerged much earlier and retained at least some contact with the surface world during the Fourth Age. Elves. Elves did not remain exclusively in Tier 1 during the Fourth Age. During the early Fourth Age, they ruled larger areas of modern-day Kandarian. Tazar. Tazar, having lived an isolated life since the First Age, made their first documented contact with surface civilizations. Vampires. Under the rule of Lord Draken, the vampires took the land of Mortania and enslaved its population. Eventually, Lord Draken felt strong enough to attack Mistalin, but he was defeated and the River Salve was blessed against creatures of Zamorak. Here are some events that have known dates that are important to this age. This is the 1st to 8th century. From the 1st to 8th century, the Elven clan of Cadarin, under the leadership of Baxterin, planned to expand eastwards and build the mountain pass of Arandar. The breakout of the elves ensues as Baxterin signs a non-aggression pact with the gnomes to the north and the human tribes further to the east, both of which have been decimated by the God Wars. This arrangement led to a time of relative peace and prosperity for the faction. Scabars is driven into isolation along with his followers. According to legend, his banishment ensued from a failed attempt at conquest, but this rendition of events is contested by the Menethite clergy. The Druids, worshippers of Guthics, built stone circles to worship Guthics during this time. The earliest surviving star chart was made during this time period, believed to have been made by the great astronomer Scorpius. Permanent settlements are constructed at Intrana, Faladar, and across Karamja. The Kingdom of Great Khurand is founded by King Rada I. Avaraka, later known as Varak, was built. Varak is the oldest surviving human settlement outside the Kandarian Desert in Gielinor today. It was founded when a tribe found a baby abandoned and took it as a good omen. The baby eventually became Arav, a famous hero. The people of Varak became very powerful and conquered their nearby tribes, eventually forming the first human nation, Mistalin. Mistalin did not resemble modern nations and was a group of tributary states to Varak until the end of age. This is the 9th to the 15th centuries. The Battle of Plain of Mud is fought between the elven goblin tribes that remain on the surface. The Kingdom of Asgarnia was founded in this time. The government of Varak converted to a monarchy during this period, but the precise date is unknown. The Dark Mage, Zarek, firmly asserts his power over Great Khurand, remaining in power for hundreds of years until he's deposed by an uprising led by Brine, thereafter known as King Brine I. This is the 16th to the 20th centuries. The Great Migration of Gnomes take place. After the death of King Alvis, the Consortium takes over Keldagrim. During the next few hundred years, the dwarves become very prosperous, as well as technologically advanced. The Consortium's leadership enables the development of steam-powered boats and trains, as well as the advanced methods of smelting ore in factories. Settlers came up the river south, looking for places to settle. Heedless of the warnings they received at Paterdomus, and settled in Mortania, building Canifis, Port Prismas, Benkenstrand's castle. They all eventually came under the dominion of vampires. Among those who arrived at Port Phasmas were members of Corvo family, who were last recorded by the census of Varak conducted in 1770. Port Phasmas was eventually freed, but the inhabitants were betrayed by their savior, Necrovarus, and became ghosts unable to pass into the next life. The town of Lumbridge was founded in Mistalin. Alcrad was built soon after, but its people were independent of Mistalin. The Church of Holy Saradomin is erected in Lumbridge. The War of the Five House breaks out in Great Khurand. King Cardas I succeeds afterwards. Rediscovery of runecrafting leading to the dominance of humans. Here are a few other events that happened with unknown dates. Morton is affected by the haze originating from Castle Draken, turning inhabitants into afflicted and disturbing shades in their catacombs. Thus, according to the diary of Herbie Flax, happened when Avaraka had been renamed. The Zamarakian Order of Black Knights is established in northern Asgarnia, leading to constant conflict with the White Knights, which eventually leads to their official overthrow and exile from Asgarnia. With all these events and information, this marks the end of the Fourth Age. I hope you all enjoyed. Next episode's going to be the Fifth Age, and I might end it there on a note. We'll talk about it. I'll let you know. Have a good day, guys. Bye!